Hello and welcome back. By 1957, RCA created stereo. It was a time when there was a grueling fight for the record market between Columbia and RCA. However, stereo records were expensive, you needed expensive gear, and this was only 12 years after the war. It was the aftermath of the war, when many countries in Europe were being rebuilt, and people lack the basic things in the house, right? Like a fridge or a washing machine. So not everyone was willing or could afford the new format. In fact, stereo became the universal standard in 1969, if memory serves. So what happened during those years? Well, most records were mixed and mastered in mono. Stereo was an afterthought. Sometimes they were not properly recorded in stereo. They were electronically reprocessed or fake stereo made from the mono. And also teenagers had those cheap mono pickups. So most singles were in mono. I was raised with a stereo format because I started buying records in the mid-70s, but my father, who started by the late 40s, early 50s, knew about the mono format and lectured me on how records should sound when they're mixed and mastered in mono. So today I thought of showing you 12 seminal albums that, in case you don't own them in mono, I'd like you to give it a chance and realize how different they could sound, and in many occasions much better. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first one I want to show you is Sinatra, right? Songs for Swinging Lovers. This album was recorded both in mono and stereo, but according to the people in the know, the mono recordings, there were two different master tapes. In some of the tapes, the sound was okay, but not in the others, so it was difficult to get to buy the right one. Then stereo was made, and as Sinatra was more to the taste of the adults in the family, well, some people did buy the stereo. However, I will ask you to give the mono a chance, right? It really surprised me when I first played it, and since then, this is my go-to pressing. Originals, of course, of these items are very expensive. They're very hard to find in decent condition. But this Universal Music Company reissue, which is from 2016, it's a very well done reissue. It is mono, it's not very good, not like the original, but it is very inexpensive, and you can, for very little money, listen to Sinatra the way it was meant to be. Next one, and very important, Mr. Elvis Presley and the Sound Collection. Now, Elvis Presley, those days, right? I'm talking about the mid-50s, right? Elvis Presley recorded his songs in Sun Phillips Studios in Memphis, and it was a very small studio and with a lot of echo, which gave a unique sound to those recordings. So, unless you've got the original shellacs or the original monos from the 50s, which is unlikely, and they're going to be very expensive, you need to get this album. The thing is that this album didn't come out till 1975, so for at least 20 years, people could not listen to the original mono sessions the way they were recorded. Does this album sound as good as the mono records? the original singles. No, it doesn't. It's a 33, but it's close. This item was released internationally, but surprisingly, it was not released in the States. So do try to get a copy. All are made from the same stamper. The only difference, if you buy, say, the UK pressing or the, I don't know, the German pressing or the French pressing, is the colour of the label inside. But as I say, they all come from the same stampers, and the sound is different enough. It's sold very poorly, very, very poorly. So chances are that you will find near-mint copies for under a tenner anywhere. So what happened in the States? Well, the Sound Sessions came out on CD, but we had to wait until 2014 to get mono vinyl, right? And it's this one, right? A Boy from Tupelo, right? That was released by Sony and Legacy. It sounds great, very close to the Sound Sessions, and it includes a mono version of That's All Right Mama without the echo and the pre-echo that was recorded in South Phillips Studios. But RCA, when they signed Elvis, could never reproduce that original sound, right? The sound became different when he became a star with the RCA. So if you want to listen to that Elvis, right, that went straight to the top in about a couple of years, get one of these. Now let's talk a little bit about jazz. Right? Miles Davis, Lift to the Scaffold. Right? It is a soundtrack of a movie. I've always had the stereo version until I bought this one, which I'm sorry, but I don't recommend this copy to you. Right? It's a reissue, but it's got quality control problems, and you spend a lot of money. But there are versions, I mean, many versions around where you can get them on pressing. It is fantastic, and it will give you a different feeling from the stereo. Let's talk now about The Who. The Who started in the 60s, so and teenagers bought their singles. So most of their albums and most of the singles were recorded in mono. Right? Then, as the case was with the Beatles or the Kings or the Stones, they did stereo versions. Some were acceptable and others were really unlucky, right? I don't like the stereo version of A Quick One. It sounds, I don't know, clanky and it's not captivating. It is not something that you want to play over and over again. So the thing would be to buy a mono copy of A Quick One, but they are quite expensive and difficult to find in very good condition. But Track Records, only 4 or 5 years later, issued these two fair, let me show you, these two fair, fantastic, right, from the early stampers with A Quick One in the mono, the right mono version, and the Who Sell Out in the stereo version, which is my favorite one. This item is not expensive at all, right? So if you don't have one, just get a copy and listen to the real thing. Next one up is Cream, Disraeli Gears, right? I've always listened to these albums in stereo, right? Because as I said, I started buying albums in the 70s. And I never paid attention to the mono till a friend of mine advised me to get this copy. Originals are very hard to find. They're not inexpensive. They sound incredible, but you've got to spend a lot of money to get one in very decent condition. But this company, it's a very rare company that I've never heard of before, Lilith Limited, right, issued this mono version in 2016 that holds up very well and sounds great. And the good thing about this is that you got the instruments centered, you got the vocal centered, and the full power, right, of the mono version. This is the label. It is not expensive, as I said. You can get a copy for, say, 30, 25 if you're lucky, even sealed copies, because it's sold poorly. And it will give you a different idea of how these albums sound. Moving on, here comes a band that was very successful at the very beginning, because a single of, well, I'll do this later, it's just bothering me, sorry. I'm talking about Procol Harum, right? Procol Harum went straight to the top, with the top of the charts with A Whiter Shade of Pale. A Whiter Shade of Pale was recorded both in mono and stereo. To me, the stereo version is the one, because I grew up with it. And it was not only till about 2 decades ago that I listened to the mono version. So I wanted to buy the first album in mono, right, to see what it sounded like. And it was great. I was misinformed, and A Whiter Shade of Pale is not on the first album that starts with Conquistador. But, as in the case of The Who, the record company issued this twofer with the first album in mono, and A Salty Dog, another fantastic album, in stereo, as this one was recorded in stereo. The good thing about this twofer is that they included A Whiter Shade of Pale in mono. So I think this is a must. It's from the same record company, very easy to spot, right, with The Fly on the label. They're inexpensive. I bought this one for something like 25 or 13, absolutely mint condition. The mono sounds great, and the stereo version of A Salty Dog as well. Well, as all the bands, most of the bands in the 60s, the Kinks became famous with their singles, and albums was an afterthought for teenagers. But as in the case of the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, this was meant to be listened to in mono, right? Most of the stereos are really bad sounding. So try to get a copy of Village Green Preservation Society in mono. There's a huge difference. Now, UK originals are very expensive. They are hard to find. But fortunately, in 1980, Ariola in Germany re-released the album in the original mono, and it sounds very, very good. I'll show you the label. Here it is, the Pi label, and with mono here, right on the left. Again, inexpensive. You can find them in near mint condition, and compare them to the stereo version, and you notice the difference. Now let's go for the big ones, right? The Rolling Stones. This is their first compilation, right? Big Hits, High Tide, and Green Grass, right? It was issued both in mono. I think this is the mono version, and it was issued in stereo, right? This is the stereo version. Surprisingly, they're not very expensive, these items, right? So I got both. I got the mono and the stereo. Now, the mono version is hands down my favorite one, right? It really sounds as it was meant to sound, right? And very, very close to the singles, to the original 65. It is not expensive, surprisingly, and it includes a wonderful booklet, with lots of pictures, right? And lots of hits from the era. Have you seen your mother, baby, standing in the shadow, painted black? It's all over now, the last time, Heart of Stone, come on, Satisfaction, Get Out of My Clouds, etc., etc. An absolute master. The next one was quite a surprise for me. Is Mr. Bob Dylan. This is probably my favorite Dylan album. Right? Highway 61 revisited for many reasons, right? Over the years. Of course, I bought this album in stereo in the 1970s. The sound is nothing to write home about. I tried different CBS pressings and none of them were to my liking, but I've always thought that that was the way the album was meant to be. I like but that's a different thing. I like the DCC, in stereo, the compact disc released by the Steve Hoffman Company in the mid to late 90s, I think. No, this is not the time to do this. And although it sounds better than most of the vinyl versions I've got, it's not a very good sounding album. So my surprise came in 2010 when I decided to buy the mono version. Now, if you want to get an original mono version of Bob Dylan's Highway 61, you're going to spend a lot of money, and it will be very hard to find a decent sounding copy. But, as I said, in 2010, Sunday's Company and Sony as well released mono versions from the original analog tapes, fully analog albums. Some people prefer the Sundays, some people, like me, prefer the Legacy. I was shocked when I first heard the album in mono. Like a Rolling Stone, it didn't appeal to me as much because I'm so used to the stereo version. But once I got past that, it became clear that it was much nicer to have Dylan, centered in the soundstage, right, and singing to you as if he were in the room. And I can tell you this: when I first listened to Desolation Row in mono, it gave me chills. There was what people call the wow moment when you think that the artist is in the room. Right? So if you don't have the experience, if you've never listened to Highway 61 in mono, please go ahead. And of course, if originals are too expensive for you, like they are for me, you can get this Sony Legacy, 180 grams. It sounds good. No issues, no returns. This was very well done. Or the Sundays if you're in America. And while you're at that, listen to the whole album, and maybe you'll become a Highway 61 mono fan the way I am now. And of course, we've got to finish with who else but the Beatles. Now, Beatles have mono and stereo versions of their albums. The stereo versions sold poorly. Most of them were afterthoughts. As you know, they were down when the band was not there. The Fab Four couldn't care less about them. But some people like mono and stereo versions of different albums, and so do I. But there are three albums in particular that I don't see the point of the stereo. First one being Please Please Me, the second one with the Beatles, and the third one, Rubber Soul. Why? Well, because it it's such a hard panning that you get the voices coming out from one speaker and the instruments coming for the other one. I can't stand that. I could never figure why people would enjoy that kind of sound. If you do, of course, I respect yourself. We all hear things differently, and if stereo is your thing, go ahead with it. But if you don't have a mono version of Rubber Soul, please grab one. The thing is that when I was younger and more foolish and followed advice without any critical insight, I went for the Dash 5 mastered by Hazel Yarwood, because I read everywhere and heard everywhere that was the best and the album can sound. Some people like the Dash 1, which is the Loud Cat. I don't. So I went for this one. As the 1965, is it? Was very expensive. I tried to look for a 1982 reissue with the 1966 stampers. I lacked out, bought the album in near mint condition. It's this one. It's a beauty. It's in wonderful, wonderful condition. I don't think it's been given 2, 3, or 4 spins. But the sad thing about this is, when I played the album, I didn't like the sound. Oh my God, I didn't like the mid-range. And to me, the bass was lacking. And I thought, oh God, is this what people are raving about? Oh, what I'm going to do now? I don't like the stereo and the mono version. I mean, to me, it leaves to be desired. Years later, the 2014 came out. Here it is. And I must say that this is my favorite sounding version of the album, bar none. I know Beatles experts complain that the bass has been boosted here and that it's not absolutely and truthfully representative of the original. I don't really care. I think that the album benefits from that bass, that it sounds incredible here. It was really cheap when it came out, and I still think that not for much money you can get one in very decent condition. To me, it beats the mono-Japanese release from 1982 and 86, and honestly, it beats the original 1960s album. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing. Click on the bottom right corner of your screen. It's free, and you'll help me reach the 1K. Thanks for your time, and bye for now. Take care.